Live from our hurricane headquarters with real-time analysis from some of the nation's top meteorologists, this is Tracking the Tropics, powered by Bose Electric.
Hurricane Beryl, a Category 4 storm lashing Jamaica at this hour, with the dirty side of the storm slamming the island nation that has braced for catastrophic damage. We're live with an update and interactive Q&A here on Tracking the Tropics, powered by Bose Electric. Hello there to you folks. JB here with you. A lot to get to. We're going to get right to it. Use hashtag Hey Rebecca, hashtag Hey JB in the Facebook Live comment section. We're going to answer your questions here momentarily. We're also going to bring up, Rebecca, quickly a live feed here to show everybody what it's currently like in Jamaica. And as we do this, folks, as a reminder, we're here to answer your questions interactively. In fact, that spinning wheel, that could be one of two different things. That's either the internet letting us down or oh, no, it's back. Cameras might not be that accessible going forward in the hours ahead, Rebecca, with this storm hitting Jamaica at this hour.
Absolutely. You know, the wind sensors fail, equipment fails when the actual hurricane is hitting, when they're getting those hurricane force winds. And right now it's just looking pretty breezy out there and overcast. We're not seeing the brunt of the storm on that particular camera. And the strongest of the storms and those hurricane force winds are still to the south and east of Kingston. And so it looks like the eye wall is going to scrape Jamaica. It'll come down to basically the National Hurricane Center estimating whether or not the eye wall actually breached Jamaica. It may slide just to the south of it and we wouldn't get an official landfall, but the current forward motion suggests that especially that southern little peninsula right there might get a landfall. And so that's just something we're going to have to wait and see. It's not as perfect of a storm as it was. You can see we don't have that clear defined eye on the infrared satellite. It's a little better on the visible satellite, but the resolution wasn't as high. And so I chose this satellite just to show you where the storms were still developing and where we're also seeing a little bit of weakening with the convection on the southern and eastern side of that system.
We're getting regular updates, of course, from the NHC. Let's send Rebecca over to the wall to break down the very latest, because Beryl is still a Category 4 major hurricane, Rebecca, at this hour.
A very powerful storm. Now, we do know storms that are weakening as they make landfall do a little bit less damage than storms that are strengthening as they make landfall. And this storm is also moving very fast. So those are two things working in favor for Jamaica, is that the duration of time that this storm will impact the island is shorter as a result of that fast forward motion. And we do anticipate some weakening. Hurricane Hunter aircraft are flying through the system right now, and they've been flying through it throughout the day. And so some of our data comes from that. Some of our data comes from the buoys and sensors that it passes over, but that latest 2 o'clock update is that the maximum winds are at 140 miles per hour, so it's still a Category 4 storm. That minimum central pressure sitting at 959 millibars, and it's moving to the west-northwest at 18 miles per hour. So that's still very fast for a tropical system, but it's not as fast as it was moving yesterday. If you remember yesterday, it was moving at 22 miles per hour. And so that forecast track's getting updated every hour because it's impacting land. And so they still expect it to become a Category 3 storm, but they've moved back the timing on that by almost 24 hours. Now, instead of it being a Category 3 storm this evening, it's expected to be a Category 3 storm by tomorrow morning. And so after that, weakening to a Category 2 storm as it approaches Cozumel. And so it looks like Cancun and possibly northern Cozumel will be on the dirty side of the storm with the higher storm surge and the higher winds, and possibly down in Belize, less of that storm surge threat because of the direction that this storm is hitting that coastline. After that, it will become a tropical storm as it re-enters the Gulf, but even the National Hurricane Center's forecasting it to become a weak Category 1 hurricane by Sunday morning before impacting southern Texas and northern edges, northeastern Mexico there. And so this is Sunday night into Monday, so that timeline has slowed down by a day as well. And so that forward motion slowing just a little bit, also slowing the impact time down a bit as it makes its way through the Gulf. Also, intensification has changed. Instead of it just making landfall as a tropical storm, they expected to make that final landfall as a Category 1 hurricane. And so the Hurricane Hunter aircraft are flying through this right now. They always fly the same pattern, and so you can see it right here. And what the raw data is showing is that they found some 10 seconds wind speeds of 160 miles per hour and the surface pressure of 951 millibars. And so that is considerably lower than what they released with their 2 o'clock update of 140 mile per hour winds. And so sometimes these wind speeds that we're getting from the raw data aren't interpolated for what you can expect at the surface. And so that's why you might have that disparity there, but still a very powerful system, still pretty well organized. And so we don't have the storm surge product that we use for Florida for Jamaica, but they were expecting 6 to 9 feet of storm surge. This is a wave heights forecast. And so the center, closer to the eye as it approaches this part of the southern and eastern part of Jamaica here, just to the south of Kingston, you can expect wave heights in that 30-foot range. And so really, really huge waves, unsurvivable waves, if you will, out in the Caribbean right now. Now, the wave heights do calm down as the center is over Jamaica itself. And at this point, it's the northern side of the island that will start to see the worst of the wave heights. And so this is all going to be really threading the needle as to where the eye ends up over Jamaica. And if we get the dirty side of the storm slamming the northern portions of the island, or if it stays to the south and the northern portions of the island are really spared from that sort of activity. But we could see 15 to 20 foot waves on the northern side of the island if that scenario plays out. Now, as soon as the eye gets back out over that warm water and clears Jamaica, we see the wave heights go back up to that 30-foot range. And so that'll be all to the south of Cuba. Cuba won't see much from this, that 5-foot range for Cuba on the southern in terms of wave heights. But as this approaches Cozumel, now we're looking at 15 to 20-foot waves in Cozumel and Tulum. In Belize, you're only looking at 10-foot waves, so you're on the nicer side of the system there. Once it gets back into the Gulf, the wave heights in the Gulf will be 10 to 15 feet at peak, and that's what will approach Brownsville and possibly Tampico, depending on where it ends up along the coastline here, as it does continue to get a little bit better organized before that final landfall. And so hurricane force winds scraping Jamaica certainly, and then the last of the tropical storm force winds over the western parts of Jamaica by late tonight, early tomorrow morning. As this storm moves forward, Georgetown will be on the edge of severe winds, but mostly tropical storm force winds. And then it looks like from Cozumel to Tulum is the possibility to see that swath of hurricane force winds, although it is tightening considerably at that point. Tropical storm force winds for the most part over the Gulf, and then briefly getting back up to hurricane force winds before potentially impacting Brownsville down to Tampico with those tropical storm force winds. And so right now it's a battle of the ocean heat versus the shear. If you joined us yesterday, we talked about how it was going to be moving over the warmest waters on the globe over the next 24 hours. This is available ocean energy, and it's in the extreme range and will be in the extreme range after it clears Jamaica as well. And we know that warm ocean temperatures provide a fuel source for systems like this, but it's battling against shear, which interrupts the storm's ability to stay organized or intensify. And so it's going to be a battle between those two elements. And what we need to see over the next couple of hours is some weakening, because that would indicate that we're going to continue to see weakening because of the shear. But once again, all of this energy is available to the south of Cuba all the way up to Cancun. Once it gets into the Gulf, it's lower to moderate energy. We're just not looking at that available ocean energy in the Gulf that it's seeing to the south of Cuba. And so that was the only question mark in the forecast yesterday was, is the shear going to do its job and continue to weaken this system despite the fact that there's such abundant energy from those warmer sea surface temperatures? So this is the wind shear forecast. Red is high shear. And so right now, as it clears Jamaica and moves into one of those heavily sheared areas, for this forecast to hold true, we need this system to weaken because of this shear. The forecast is calling for a Category 3 storm by tomorrow afternoon, and then a Category 2 storm as it approaches Cozumel. Of course, land interaction weakens everything, and so that's why it goes from a Category 2 storm to a tropical storm as it crosses the Bay of Campeche there from Cozumel all the way over and back into the Gulf. And there's a little bit of shear in the Gulf, but not much, and it erodes pretty quickly. And so that's one of the reasons they expect it to re-intensify back into a Category 1 storm, not necessarily because the Gulf is so abundantly warm right now, but mostly because of that lack of shear. The shear starts to dissolve a bit. And so behind it is good news. We have the atmospheric dust, so that Saharan dust moving in behind Beryl. So Beryl's right here by Friday afternoon, and we've got a giant plume of Saharan dust headed towards the Gulf and another one right on the way behind it. We know dust doesn't save us, but the conditions that make dust possible are conducive to quieter things in the Gulf. I'm going to leave you with a brief mention of 96L down to only a 20% chance to develop. It's following on the heels of Beryl, which is right here right now, but it is not expected to develop at this point. It's looking less and less impressive on the satellite. And if it did develop, it is only expected to take a very similar path as a rainmaker. So whether it develops or whether it doesn't, not much going to come out of that system, which is the good news. And so what we're tracking the latest with Beryl slamming into Jamaica, I'm interested to see what will end up being able to extrapolate once this is all said and done, because like I said, just like cameras go down, weather stations go down in high winds like this. And so I'm interested to see what winds we are able to measure before those systems go down, because unfortunately this is going to be a really, really rough day for Jamaica.
Let's hit the touch screen and show. We've got a couple of different rotating cameras showing you live conditions in Jamaica. And Rebecca, here we're looking at a bridge. I do not know the exact location of this bridge. Clearly, we're not seeing the whipping conditions that you would normally see, and that's just because we're still a little bit early as far as the worst of Beryl hitting Jamaica itself, right?
Yes, and Jamaica has mountains, so if you were on the opposite side of the mountain than where the winds were hitting, it might not be bad until the storm gets much closer or starts to engulf Jamaica.
There's one of the rotating cameras, so that's way more ominous looking.
Yes.
Are you looking at Beryl right there?
I don't know. Beryl's such a wide storm. Those outermost rain bands would be over the entire island at this point. I'm still not seeing much movement in terms of trees. And so we should be at least seeing tropical storm force to severe winds up to 60 miles per hour on the southeastern side of Jamaica right now. And so I'm not sure that's what we're looking at here.
Let's remind our audience we're here interactively to answer your questions. Again, putting the expertise and experience of meteorologist Rebecca Barry right in the palm of your hand. She's here to answer your questions about Beryl, about 96L, about the Atlantic hurricane season. So if you use hashtag HeyRebecca or hashtag HeyJB in the Facebook Live comment section, we can put your comment on screen. And we're going to do so starting here with a featured comment from, I believe, yes, Jean Marie on the WFLA Facebook page. It's not just Jamaica, of course, that people are concerned about, saying hashtag Hey Rebecca, what about Honduras?
I think that Honduras is probably going to end up okay just because of the positioning of the storm on the weaker side of it. And so I don't think that's going to end up being anything like what we're seeing for Jamaica. So I think it's going to be much better, not to mention the storm has a little bit of weakening to do before it gets there.
I'm not sure if you're able to advance the graphic here, but the track, I'd like to bring this up because we can show Honduras on the map. We can show, of course, Belize, Cancun, but really one thing that really, I found to be particularly interesting is that we are talking about potentially a Beryl landfall in the continental U.S. So we already had a first landfall in Caracau, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. That's a small island that, by the way, we have pictures on WFLA.com that are just jaw-dropping because of the devastation that island has experienced as a result of Beryl, which blew over it relatively quickly, but still left a lot of damage in its wake. We're going to, without a doubt, if we don't have a second landfall event in Kingston in Jamaica, undoubtedly we're going to have one on the Yucatan Peninsula, right?
Yes.
But then if you can advance this one more time, in the cone there is South Texas. So if we have seen a northward curve just a little bit here over the course of the last several days, just on the back end of the forecast, a little bit more of a hook.
Yes.
And so right now, I mean, Tropical Storm Beryl could be making landfall somewhere in the area of Brownsville, Texas, even though this is still a long way out.
Yes, and a lot of that will have to do with how it behaves once it's in the Gulf. Forecast models do better once the eye or the center of the system has cleared the land and it has at least one or two model runs, because land interaction always changes things. We're not able to predict how the eye or the center of rotation might interact with higher elevations and exactly where that system will be traveling over Cozumel and that part of Mexico. And so we won't know that eventual landfall until after the center clears and gets into the Gulf and we get a good model run with a fixation on where the actual center is at that point. The reintensification issue also changes landfall because stronger systems curve northward more quickly than weaker systems do. And so the spread of this cone here encompasses, if it stays a weak tropical storm, it would probably end up more closer to Tampico. If it becomes a stronger system and more organized, then it'll probably end up closer to Brownsville.
Another, it says there in the bottom left, that's very helpful. Kingston City Live. So you can see that there's clearly some precipitation on the camera lens as we look out on the city itself. No doubt it's raining there, at least. I don't know how hard it's raining. Oh, okay, so we have some camera movement here. This is very helpful. We're not controlling this feed. We're just tapping into it. There's the shot of that same bridge that we had earlier.
It says it's the Flat Bridge Live.
Ah, there it is.
Across the bottom there.
Did I miss that earlier? I might have.
I missed it too.
Yeah.
It looks a little breezier than it did earlier. I'm happy to see that the river is not over the bridge. Storm surge would be an issue right along the immediate coastline on the southeastern portions of Jamaica. But because it is, parts of Jamaica are so elevated, it would be difficult for the storm surge to travel up higher elevations. It would slam into the higher portions and then recede.
An educated question here in our comment section from Crystal Vasquez, joining us on the WFLA Facebook page. Again, use any of our hashtags and we can feature your question like this. Hashtags for us both. Is the storm trying to go through an eye wall replacement? This is a term that you've used.
Yeah,
before.
absolutely. And so storms, in order to maintain their strength, must go through eye wall replacement cycles. It briefly weakens them, but then allows them to intensify further because of that more robust vertical structure of the eye wall. I'm not seeing any eye wall replacements cycles on the satellite, but like I said earlier, the visible satellite was much more clear. And so if we were going to examine that, I would probably prefer to use the visible satellite than the infrared satellite we're currently using. The lack of current distribution around the center. We've got a lot of convection on the northern and western side of the eye right now, and not necessarily on the south and eastern side. That leads me to believe that this storm's just struggling a bit with shear, and it's not necessarily going through an eye wall replacement cycle.
As we take a look here at another one of our rotating cameras, it says down there halfway tree live. I'm going to see if I can get an idea as to exactly. I would imagine this is going to be in Kingston.
Mm-hmm.
And here we have another one, Kingston City Live. So you can clearly, visibility is weakening as, literally the minutes go by here on this live stream.
Happy to know it's not just an American phenomenon that right in the middle of the storm, somebody's driving through it.
That's right.
There's a little car there.
You would imagine that officials in Jamaica have encouraged people to stay off the roadways at this point. However,
there's always somebody.
It's always somebody in a pickup truck who's like, you know what? My truck is built for this. I'm going to send it. That's right. Well, if you're watching from Jamaica, we hope that you are in and that you have found a safe place to kind of ride out the storm, because this could get pretty ugly in the hours ahead. Next question comes in from Edwin. Again, use hashtag #HeyRebecca or hashtag #HeyJB if you want your comment spotlighted. Watching from Texas, a tropical storm or depression when it hits the San Antonio area. This goes back to our talk about Texas.
And so we could see rain, especially once the system gets weaker. They tend to become very disjointed. The rain is not evenly distributed around the center. Weaker systems, usually the rain is further away from the center than the stronger systems. And so you could end up with tropical depression-like weather in southern Texas there for a day or two, especially if it starts to get caught up in those stronger upper level winds and stalls out for a day or so. So it's possible, but it's not something that's easy to predict at this point. We really need the system to get in the Gulf for about 6 hours before we have a better idea and can start point forecasting what it'll be like in Texas versus what it'll be like in Mexico.
Let's go to this one here from Bella. People love Cancun. They do, whether it's a cruise stop or whether you're going there to hang out on the beaches. Have a good time, right?
Yes.
Bella wants to know how it's looking for Cancun. And look, if you're looking at Cancun on a map, Rebecca, and I'll bring up the map alongside you, it's not looking great for Cancun and Cozumel.
No, it's worse for Cozumel than it is for Cancun, but Cancun's still on what we call the dirty side of the storm because the onshore winds, air goes counterclockwise around the center of the eye. And so the winds will be onshore for several hours there, bringing the highest storm surge and the highest waves there, along with the highest wind speeds. The only good thing about Cancun is that it has pretty decent structures, and I anticipate them, on basically it'll clear them on Friday, on Saturday morning, kind of hosing out the shops and breaking out the tequila, if I remember Cancun as it was 20 years ago.
I mean, right now, that there are people in Cancun and Cozumel. They're
having a hurricane party.
They're having a hurricane party. They are, because it's not there yet. even though it will, of course, Beryl will be there in the not too distant future. Let's go to this comment from Janet. Yeah, on the WFLA Facebook page, hashtag Hey Rebecca. What will the storm do to the Montego Bay area?
I think they can expect at least 6 feet of storm surge. And unfortunately, those whipping winds, the Category 4 winds right now are sustained at 140 miles per hour. And probably only southern Jamaica is going to see those 140 mile per hour sustained winds. The wind field is getting tighter, which means less people will experience that higher wind speed. But severe winds, certainly.
And I had to confirm here, just bringing up, because I'm, making sure I have the geography of Jamaica right, because Kingston is in that southeast quadrant.
Yeah, Kingston's in trouble.
Kingston's in trouble.
Yeah.
Montego Bay is in that northwest quadrant, so there's more there that is going to obviously protect them, but not. Look, you're still getting hit by a Category 4 hurricane.
Absolutely. And so the nightmare for Montego Bay would be if the eye travels far enough northward across Jamaica that they also get the onshore winds. So if the eye crosses Jamaica, then the northern side of Jamaica gets the onshore winds. Whereas if the eye stays to the south or central south of Jamaica, they never really get those onshore winds at the full brunt of it.
Here we have a shot where there aren't any drivers on the road.
There's a pedestrian though.
Yeah, no.
We got a person.
Probably want to eventually get inside when things really. Oh no, there's always a motorcyclist.
And then the motorcycle guy was like, "Hold my beer."
And another vehicle on the roadway. And look, it's not necessarily extremely dangerous to be on the road right now. You would just hope that people that are on the road are getting to their destination.
Yes, we're hoping they are on their way with their last minute preparations to their safe structure.
And there are going to, look, let's be real. There are going to be people that are on the roads that absolutely have to be. If you're heading to the hospital for that, what could be a long shift, if there's going to be injuries, if there's going to be, a lot of people, an influx of people coming into your particular, hospital, your ER, that there's going to be traffic on the roadways. You would just hope that it's absolutely necessary at this stage with the storm literally knocking on Jamaica's doorstep. Let's see here. Linda, hashtag Hey Rebecca. My son and wife are in Negril, Jamaica. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. What is the outlook there? And if you're unfamiliar with that spot, Rebecca, I'll get on the map and I'll let you know where it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, it's a town in Jamaica that is on the west end of the island.
Okay.
In fact, it's right by West End. In fact, if you were looking at Jamaica on a map, it doesn't get much more west than Negril or Negril. I want to make sure that...
And so the fact that you are on the west end means that you are not going to see much of that storm surge. It's really the southeastern end that's going to see the worst of the storm surge. And so you'll still most likely experience hurricane force winds. I don't think that you'll get those Category 4 force winds unless the storm starts to jog a little bit further north than it is right now. Right now, it looks like the northern part of the eye wall is going to scrape the southern edge of Jamaica. And so we might end up with a landfall or we might not. It'll be one of those things where we have to wait and see. It'll be a matter of a few miles, whether we get an actual true landfall or not. I think you're in for 6 hours of very uncomfortable winds and rain, but I'm not sure that flooding is as big of a concern for that area as, say, Kingston or the southeastern portions of the island.
In your ear, I'm going to play the pronunciation. Okay, ready?
I don't have my IFBN.
Oh, you don't have your IFBN?
No,
okay.
Sorry.
Negril.
Thank you.
Negril. I didn't know either. Yeah. So learning on the fly here, but hopefully to everybody in Negril, fingers crossed that you're able to stay safe and ride out the storm. You were just talking about this, so Cynthia's right on cue here. How close is it to Jamaica? Well, let's go full screen, everybody, to the actual map, and you can see that right now those outer ring bands are hitting Kingston, are hitting Jamaica. Really, the entirety of the island is now covered in red. However, as far as the eye wall, or the center of the eye, if you will, how far to the south would you say right now it is from
It looks like it's about 40 miles to the south. And so, once again, it's going to be a matter of a mile or two, I believe, as far as the eye wall scraping the coastline of Jamaica as to whether we get that actual official landfall or not. But it does look like the southern edge of the storm. If you're to watch the eye, you can see how it degrades a little over the past couple of frames of and notice how we're finally starting to get the convection. The brighter color reds are thunderstorms and convection firing up. Leading up until about 2 hours ago, we weren't seeing much of that on the southern edge of the system at all. That's an indication shear is weakening the system when we don't have that evenly distributed convection. But now we are getting a burst of convection around the southern side of that eye, and it is going to wrap around. And so perhaps the shear has done a number on the system and it is trying to recover. But I would think between the land interaction and the shear, it'll be interesting to see how long the system's able to hold on to these powerful winds and when it does start to basically downgrade.
This is a last call for your questions and comments from meteorologist Rebecca Barry. I'm also on the lookout for questions and comments. You can use hashtag #HeyRebecca, hashtag #HJB. We'll be ending our live stream here soon. We're going to leave up the live cameras for you over the course of the live stream. However, as far as the interactive Q&A portion where we're talking to you guys, that's going to be ending here in the next few minutes. So if you have any questions, now is the time to use hashtag #HeyJB and hashtag #HeyRebecca. Let's go to Janice really quickly with a follow-up on Negril, saying that it is the most beautiful spot in Jamaica. Praying for them there. Yeah, praying for everybody in Jamaica right now.
Yeah, it's just hard to watch because, especially with the curveball of being an island, they can't drive out, and they have a limited number of resources to get people off the island and get resources on the island to help with a situation like this. It's a completely different game than a Florida mainland hurricane where you can just drive a couple of hours and be completely out of danger. And so my heart hurts for these island communities. I hope the infrastructure holds. Unfortunately, a lot of times storms like this do basically wreak havoc on any weakened infrastructures.
This comment here from Joseph. Yeah, I know, I like this one. Hey, Rebecca, can we just blast the hurricanes into submission? How do we blast hurricanes to smithereens? Is that possible yet? Do we have the technology?
No, my favorite part of meteorology school was all of the failed experiments that humans have continuously tried to rein in weather with, whether it's can we set a bomb off in the middle of a hurricane and raise the pressure because it's low pressure and the bomb would make it high pressure. Can we cloud seed? Can we do this? Can we do that? No, Mother Nature's still winning. We are doing the best we can, but there is no stopping this system for anything man-made, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, you can't blow up a hurricane.
You just have a lot of radiation swirling
that,
around a hurricane.
That would be really bad. If anything, it would make the hurricane probably worse, depending, of course, on how the science plays out. But you just don't want to try to set off a man-made bomb inside of a hurricane. It's just a recipe for disaster.
Probably tongue-in-cheek, but there was a Facebook effort organized one year for people to go to the beach at Florida and shoot towards the hurricane.
You're right. Everyone get their shotguns out.
Yeah, let's not do that either.
That is not going to do anything. It's just going to dump a whole lot of lead into the ocean. It's not worth it. Let's go to, let's see, Candace, hashtag #HeyRebecca. We have family in Cancun flying out Saturday. What are your thoughts on expected conditions?
Ooh. Saturday is probably going to be a little touch and go. I would also think that so let's go ahead and play the forecast track out here for you. So this is Thursday at 8 p.m. It's a category 2. It's approaching Cozumel and Cancun Friday morning. And so by Saturday at 8 a.m., it is well offshore of Cancun, but I would be worried about the flights being delayed the day before as to where all those people are going to sit on the planes. And so because of the ripple effect, I would think that it's possible that their flight may be delayed, not necessarily because of the storm. I think Saturday morning it will be safe to fly out of Cozumel as well as Cancun, but I think that the backlog from not being able to fly out the day before may cause some travel issues on Saturday as well.
And Chris was asking in our comment section about any videos coming out of Jamaica. We're going to our live stream, and I think this is frozen. Our live stream isn't going to end with our interactive Q&A. We're going to leave up these cameras for you. We might cycle back and forth with the forecast as well. There's the camera moving. So that way the people can keep an eye on the live progress that Beryl is making as it gets closer and closer to Kingston, to really the most populated areas of Jamaica itself. So any final points, Rebecca, as we wrap up the live stream? I know that we're going to be talking about it tonight on WFLA News Channel 8, but Beryl still would you believe it, still a Cat 4 hurricane hitting Jamaica.
Still a Category 4 hurricane. I'm interested to see how the storm surge does there, because it goes from very deep to very shallow almost instantly there. And so the nightmare for what we talk about on the Florida coast is how slowly the elevation goes up in the Gulf, and how that would be a higher nightmare scenario for storm surge, whereas this would probably be a better case scenario because it is such deep water up against such a high elevation. And so I'm interested to see how that plays out. I'm also very happy to see that 96L is not basically rinse and repeat.
That's a great point, because while it might have been largely inconsequential for the United States, 96L could have been a real problematic double whammy for places like Jamaica. And so super fortunate. We'll continue to track 96L, no doubt, folks. But as Rebecca noted earlier, just doesn't have the same organization as it did with our previous, when we were live with our previous episodes earlier this week, which of course is welcome news. We're going to continue, of course, our Tracking the Tropics team here at WFLA. We're going to continue to monitor the progress of Hurricane Beryl. We're going to leave up the live cameras. A landfall event might not happen because of the storm being a little bit to the south of the island itself. The center of the island might not cross over land, but make no mistake about it, folks. Jamaica is getting hit by a Category 4 hurricane, and the impacts could be devastating. To all of our friends out there in Jamaica, please stay safe. Keep you and your family, your loved ones safe, and all the best of luck to you. We'll continue to have reports as to what's happening in Jamaica, and of course, continuing to follow Beryl as it gets closer to Mexico and Belize. All of it on trackingthetropics.tv, WFLA.com, where we, of course, post our articles with updates as the news occurs. So thanks so much for joining us here on this edition of Tracking the Tropics. For meteorologist Rebecca Barry, I'm JB Biunno. We'll see you next time. Again, our regularly scheduled episodes, Tuesdays at 12:30. We have additional episodes as needed. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Find Tracking the Tropics on these platforms. And for storm updates, the latest models, and helpful resources, visit trackingthetropics.tv.